let's welcome former National Security Council Chief of Staff Fred Fleitz. Hey, Fred, it's great to have you back on. It's good to see you.
Good to be here.
I never got the hang of that anyway, as we do this via satellite and remote. Okay, Axios is reporting that U.S. Attorney John Durham's report on the criminal probe of the Trump-Russia investigation will not come out before the election. Okay, AG Barr is said to be really upset, saying that the president should stop criticizing him and Durham. Trump wants it before November 3rd. Here's what we're hearing. We know that D&I Ratcliffe sent thousands of pages, 1,000+ pages of government documents over to John Durham. John Durham took years to complete probes like the probe into the CIA's alleged, water torture and torture abuses. And also this, we're hearing that New Yorker magazine, a reporter there, is saying the impaneled grand jury is hearing new testimony about his story and, his sources. It's about the Russia Bank, the Alpha Bank computer servers basically communicating with the Trump organization here in New York City. So there's a bunch of things that John Durham is still pursuing, potential abuses of power all throughout this. When you hear all of that, what is your initial reaction?
Well, look, Durham has been at this since April of 2019. And one has to wonder, what's the purpose of this report? It's to hold people accountable. It's to bring about justice. Look, nobody's going to be prosecuted for this. To bring about justice, one has to inform the American people what happened before the election. Durham's report should have been out months ago. And concerning the documents that Ratcliffe passed, the president ordered all these documents on the Russia collusion hoax and Hillary Clinton's email scandal to be released and declassified without redactions, and Ratcliffe then gave them to the Justice Department for Durham. Well, that's not what the president asked for. He wanted these documents to be released. This just ensures that they won't be released because Durham does not want to put out a report before the election. Now, Barr asked him to put out a partial report, but apparently Durham isn't willing to do that. And I think this is really doing a great disservice to the American people. They deserve to know what happened before the election so they can factor it into how they vote.
And we should point out that there was never any conclusion in the Mueller report about Alpha Bank being an issue with the Trump organization. So let's back up. Abuses of power under the Obama administration in this probe. FBI FISA abuses, potential perjury before the FISA court by FBI officials. And John Durham is also dealing with the former FBI Director James Comey, who in testimony recently said about a half a dozen times he didn't remember details of his own Trump-Russia probe. But somehow James Comey remembered that Biden did not talk about using the obscure Logan Act, which has never been enforced, to go after General Michael Flynn when it's in FBI notes. So Durham is dealing with that too, right?
Yeah, Comey claims to have a photographic memory, but if you look at all of his testimony before congressional committees, it's just curious that he has convenient lapses of memory whenever it comes to anything that could be incriminating to him or anything that could be positive for President Trump. Now, look, the Clintons have done this for years. Hillary Clinton did this when Bill Clinton was president. And I just think it's outrageous that how could Comey forget an FBI referral from the CIA that Hillary Clinton personally approved a scheme to smear President Trump for colluding with the Russians? How could he possibly forget that?
Okay, and here's a big thing, because, again, we dig through the footnotes, we dig through the documents. We've been covering the story for 3 years now. Remember, James Comey testified that in 2017, quote, "We had an open counterintelligence investigation on General Michael Flynn since the summer of 2016. And I, in fact, authorized it to be closed. I authorized it to be shut down at the end of December, beginning of January." So first, it appears the Flynn case was kept open to keep going after Flynn and to go after Trump. But then remember this, James Comey then leaked his own memos about his private conversations with President Trump to the public, basically saying that the president allegedly said to him that he hoped Comey would let the whole Flynn case go. That was the hook to getting a special counsel appointed, Robert Mueller. But here's the issue. Not once in Comey's memos did he mention the material fact that he had already authorized the Flynn case to be closed. So don't you think that's something that will put the proper context on Comey's interactions with Trump? And when what happened with, he said he was going to close the Flynn case, but then he leaks about it. He was saying the president was trying to obstruct a case that effectively was closed, that he closed.
No, that's exactly right. And bear in mind that Comey had a responsibility to tell the incoming Trump team everything that was going on in the FBI, every major investigation. He withheld this investigation from the Trump team. That is a violation of the principle of the peaceful transfer of power. And the same thing goes for Obama and for Biden and for Susan Rice. They withheld so many details of ongoing investigations of the Trump team that they were obligated to tell the new administration about it, and they didn't, because all of them were in cahoots to destroy the Trump administration from day one.
All right, Fred Fleitz, good to see you. Come back soon, okay?
Be here, thanks.